Some relationships don't end with anger. They end quietly, with patience mistaken for love, with silence mistaken for peace. And one day you realize the quiet didn't protect you. It slowly erased you.
There was a time when Mara believed silence meant peace. She believed it meant maturity, that it meant patience, that it meant she was doing the right thing by not asking too many questions. At first, the quiet felt like space, then it began to feel like absence. But she didn't name it that way. Mara had been in the relationship for 6 years. Not dramatic years, not chaotic ones. They were the kind of years that look stable from the outside, shared routines, familiar weekends, predictable conversations. She learned early on how to be agreeable, how to soften her needs so they wouldn't feel like demands, how to phrase disappointment as understanding. When he stopped asking how her day went, she told herself he was tired. When affection became occasional instead of natural, she assumed it was normal. When arguments ended with him withdrawing instead of resolving anything, she convinced herself silence was better than conflict. She adapted quietly. And no one warned her how dangerous quiet adaptation could be.
The first time she realized something was wrong wasn't during an argument. It was during a moment that should have felt close. They were sitting on the couch. The television was on, her head was resting near his shoulder. She noticed she hadn't been touched in days. Not in anger, not in comfort, not even accidentally. She shifted slightly, hoping for a response. Nothing.
That was the moment the silence became loud. Mara didn't confront him right away. She did what many women do when love begins to thin. She worked harder. She became more accommodating, more forgiving, more careful with her words. And slowly, without realizing it, she began disappearing inside her own relationship. The betrayal didn't come with shouting or scandal. It came quietly. A message notification she wasn't supposed to see, a name she didn't recognize, a tone that felt intimate in a way he hadn't sounded with her in months. When she asked, he didn't deny it. He didn't explain either. He said, "I didn't think it mattered." That sentence stayed with her longer than the truth itself. After the relationship ended, people expected grief to look dramatic. But Mara's grief was muted. She went to work, she answered messages, she smiled when required. Inside, something felt hollow. It wasn't just heartbreak. It was the realization that she had been present while slowly being erased. She didn't miss him the way she thought she would. She missed herself. The silence followed her even after he was gone. In rooms, in conversations, in her own thoughts. She noticed how hesitant she had become, how often she second-guessed her reactions, how difficult it felt to state what she wanted without rehearsing it first. Years of being unheard had trained her to doubt the validity of her own voice. That was the part no one prepared her for.
The turning point didn't arrive as confidence. It arrived as exhaustion. One evening, after canceling plans she actually wanted to attend, Mara sat alone and realized she was still living as if someone else's comfort mattered more than her truth. Even though there was no one left to appease, that realization unsettled her because it meant the silence had moved inside her. The effort began quietly. No grand declarations. No sudden transformation.
She started by noticing when she swallowed words. She practiced saying small things out loud, what restaurant she preferred. When she was tired, when something didn't sit right. At first her voice felt unfamiliar, like using a muscle that had been unused for years. Sometimes it shook. Sometimes it came out too soft. But she didn't stop. Mara returned to journaling, something she had abandoned because it once felt selfish. She wrote about moments she had minimized, times she had stayed silent to keep peace, feelings she had buried because they seemed inconvenient. Seeing it written down made it real. She also began setting boundaries, not perfectly, not consistently. Sometimes she still over-explained, sometimes she felt guilty for choosing herself, but she noticed something shift when she didn't immediately retreat after asserting a need. The world didn't collapse. People adjusted. Some drifted away, others leaned in. And slowly Mara realized she was allowed to take up space again. Healing didn't erase the past. She still flinched at emotional withdrawal, still noticed when conversations went quiet too quickly. But now, silence no longer meant she was failing. It meant she was listening to herself. She no longer confused silence with peace. She understood now that peace had a voice, and it deserved to be heard, even when it trembled. You're not alone in this. Healing doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's just the quiet moment you choose yourself. Sometimes it's just breathing again. If this story touched you, subscribe for more, like and comment. We're in this together, softly, steadily. Thank you for being here.